Okay, this is from Wikipedia,
Nice.
of course.
The most trusted source on the internet.
Peter Howard Gilmore is an American composer, artist, author, and administrator of the Church of Satan. Gilmore graduated from NYU with both a bachelor's and master's degree in music composition. He was appointed high priest of the church in 2001 by Magistra Blanche Barton. I hope I pronounced that right. No offense if I don't. Within the church, he's known as Magus Peter H. Gilmore, High Priest of the Church of Satan, as a representative of the Church of Satan. Gilmore has been interviewed on numerous television and radio programs dealing with the topic of Satanism, including appearances on the History Channel, BBC, the Sci-Fi Channel, Point of Inquiry, and Bob Larson's Christian radio show. I think there's a lot more to know about him. I'm sure he's a very complex person, and we're very honored that we get the chance to talk to High Priest Gilmore.
Nice. Let's do this.
Well, let's see how we're doing this time.
Now you sound fantastic.
That sounds crystal clear.
Awesome.
Let's hope it lasts.
We were thinking maybe Jesus was getting in the way and like blocking the whole thing or something.
Oh, dear. We have to watch out for that. Or maybe Allah is hip to us.
There we go.
You remember that Saudi Arabia has declared all atheists terrorists and punishable by death. At least interference could be the most they could do at this point.
Unfortunately, I'm sure that happens on a daily basis over there.
It's a horrifying thing.
So speaking of that, in the Church of Satan, do you not actually believe in Satan, or is this just an atheist group, or what's going on?
Satanism is an atheist philosophy. We use Satan as a symbol, not as a being to worship, though. We consider him a symbol of pride and liberty and individualism, kind of following in the footsteps of a lot of intellectuals and artists over the past 1,000 or so years. It's a pragmatic, skeptical, and materialist position. There's nothing to do with faith or any kind of spirituality. We think that's all an illusion. Anton LaVey called this the world's first carnal religion. Because it accepts man as he is, as an animal, not something better or worse, although man is often a lot worse than the rest of the animals on our planet.
That's true.
And, we're the ones that are ruining the climate, so that's a very big problem. But the other thing about Satanism, too, is that we challenge our members to come up with their own personal hierarchy of values, so that they can be responsible for their lives. And that means for both the successes and failures, which often tends to be something off-putting to a lot of folks who always look to blame somebody for whatever problems they're having. In Satanism, you don't have that out. You can't say, the devil made me do it, or God is not smiling on me. You can't beg to somebody for help or yell at somebody for problems. It's all in your own head. So we consider it kind of a challenging philosophy for a lot of folks. And it's a niche philosophy. It's not something that we're proselytizing or trying to push on people, because we think it's rather a difficult thing for most people to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad we got that out of the way up front, because, as we've been talking to people and saying, we might talk to, the high priest of the Church of Satan, people give us weird responses.
Yeah.
And, just in our personal lives at this. And so we wanted to get that out of the way up front, because we have that understanding of your church, but I wanted to allow you a chance to make that clear.
Good. So, that was very good. And you guys you were theists and of different stripes, and both became atheists.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Cool.
Yes. We were raised in a sort of I wouldn't call it a religious household, but we were made to go to church as kids, and everyone who listens to our podcast knows this about us. But as when we got older, our dad died when we were 18, and we both kind of went in different weird religious directions. But in our mid-20s, we kind of got our heads on straight and
came back to reality.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's a good thing. With me, it was my parents are actually fairly secular. My mother was technically a Catholic, and my father technically an Episcopalian, but they weren't church going. Since I started reading very early, I kind of taught myself how to read when I was about 4. They just let me read everything. And so I read, the Bible, and I read, other things, other mythologies, particularly Greek mythology. I thought was really fascinating. But for me, I looked at it all as mythology. I didn't see the Bible as being something that had any truth to it any more than, if you're going to talk about Theseus or Heracles or something. And frankly, the Greek mythology was much more interesting with heroes and monsters and such. So I never had any kind of attraction or belief in Christianity. And so when I was 8, I declared myself an atheist because I realized that people were wondering what my position would be on things. I was in school with other kids. And then when I was 13, I finally came across the Satanic Bible when I was in a bookstore buying science fiction books. And I saw it on the rack and said, well, I've read all this other religious scripture. Let me see what this has to offer. And I read the book in one sitting and said, well, I guess I'm more than an atheist. I am a Satanist.
Wow.
So you just found it in a bookstore. I was wondering about that because I had read that you read the Satanic Bible at 13 years old, and I was like, where did he come across at 13 years old? Where did he come across the Satanic Bible?
Yeah, well, it was neat. My parents would let me. I lived in upstate New York, and I was really interested in science and biology and astronomy and such. So they would let me take the bus with a friend of mine down to go to the Museum of Natural History, which now you think, good heavens, they're letting 13-year-olds go do that. How dangerous. But it was actually pretty easy. You'd catch the bus. It would go to Port Authority. You'd go to the basement and catch the subway, which stopped right at the museum. You'd get out and do the museum. It was awesome. You could just go to the Hayden Planetarium, see all the dinosaurs, and I was, of course, nuts about dinosaurs. So on the way back in the Port Authority was this thing called the Book Bar, and it was a great bookstore, and it had a huge selection of things, and I was usually buying things by Arthur C. Clarke or Harlan Ellison or Isaac Asimov and folks like that. And there was that Satanic Bible on that rack, and I actually picked it up and looked at it and thought, yeah, no, and left it there. But when I was waiting online to pay for my books, the rack was turned just the right way, so it was there in my face, and I said, what the hell? I'll read it. And that really was like a pivotal change in my life.
Yeah, little did you know.
So do you still have that copy?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow.
I absolutely do.
So your background is in music, though, right?
Yes, I studied music composition, and I sort of minored in conducting and used to help train some of the conducting students. But music composition, I did orchestral for my undergraduate and electronic synthesis of all sorts for my graduate work at NYU. So music is my thing in that respect. It's my major art form, although I do draw and paint and do collages and of course I write. So I'm a creative person. That's always been my approach to things. But the classics have been most important to me. I started to go towards music because when I really started seriously listening to music when I was in like the first year of high school, I could listen to a Mahler symphony, and after twice hearing it, it was in my head. I could remember it. So, and I loved it. It just drove me crazy. I was just eager for more, and I absorbed, major Beethoven works and Bruckner and Shostakovich. And Shostakovich was alive back then, so it was amazing. There's new works coming out by this extraordinary Russian composer. But music to me was always the most exciting of arts. And even though I was painting most of the time up to that point, and then everybody was going, oh, you're going to be a painter, you're going to be a painter. And because I did surrealism, I would paint that was sort of a combination of Hieronymus Bosch and Salvador Dali. And then my wife did a horror magazine, which was called Gru, which won the World Fantasy Award. And I used to do illustrations for that. And then, of course, the music just became my obsession, and I did schooling for that. But little did I know that I would end up running the Church of Satan.
So did you ever write any hymns for the Church of Satan with your music, or did you ever think about that?
I've actually written music that's inspired by satanic ideas, and if you go to my music downloads page, which is on churchofsatan.com. You can see some of the things that I've got there. Some of my stuff sounds sort of bombastic, kind of film music-y-ish, like John Williams or Jerry Goldsmith. There's one thing I did. I worked with a heavy metal band briefly where I would do sort of classical introductions to their heavy metal songs. And for one set of things, each one is a tribute to a different composer. One is like Bruckner, and one is Strauss, and one is Shostakovich, and so on, and Mahler. And I spoke the texts from the Satanic Bible, the 9 Satanic Statements, and wrote classical music of my own type as homage to these different composers around that. I still remember playing that for Anton LaVey on one of our meetings. I brought the cassette, and he was pretty impressed. Because he was an amazing musician, Anton LaVey. Like, he was self-taught. He had studied when he was very young, but really he was just really facile, and he could play almost anything on the keyboards. And he used synthesizers to make these kind of self-controlled orchestras, which could either be something like a pit band in some sleazy dive, all the way to sounding like a philharmonic orchestra. When my wife and I would come to visit him, he'd often practice more classical stuff so that he could wow us, which he did, because he would do Saint-Saëns Danse Macabre, or he'd play some Wagner or Liszt, and he just really got into the spirit of it, and he'd play these kind of overblown, hyper romantic versions, and we'd sing with him too. Like, he would like to do different kinds of old popular songs, and so my wife would sing sort of torch songs with him, and I would sing kind of operetta stuff sometimes, although I sang the Ode to Joy in German from Beethoven's Ninth, and he accompanied me once, which was kind of fun.
Wow. So how did you go from being a musician and meeting Anton LaVey to becoming the high priest?
Well, what happened was that once we met Anton LaVey, my wife and I, and that was, let's see, when was that? I think 1982, we met him for the first time. Like, 'cause we joined, well, I mean, I read the Bible when I was 13, and then in 15, I actually contacted the organization. I wrote to them as a 15-year-old and said, hey, I'm really interested in this. This philosophy resonates with me. And they said, well, we don't really accept people who aren't legally adults into the organization, so you're going to have to wait. But, which is, of course, a policy we maintain still. It's really, we're not like religions that are like, get them when they're young, and you can't, they never, like, the Jesuits want to do that, and all the other religions want to do that. But Satanism is like, no, you have to be a mature adult. You really have to have this being well considered. But they were very polite to me, and they sent me some information and said, just keep studying, and surely you'll be ready. And when we finally were ready, we joined and were invited to go out and meet Anton LaVey. And my wife and I were both in college. She was studying English at Fordham and then later NYU, and I was at NYU doing my music. So we kind of waited for a little while until we felt we had accomplished some things academically. We both did very well in school, and said, okay, now we've got some accomplishments. We're ready to meet this man who has impressed us so much. Yeah. And we went out and met him, and he was just like he is in the book. His voice that he has in his writing, which is kind of sardonic and funny and earthy, was exactly the person he is and was. We were so impressed because you often can be disappointed by people, of course. You read their works and you kind of go, well, that seems too good to be true, or maybe they're really kind of a creep when you meet them. And it was not like that at all. He was so warm and funny and treated us like family. And that began our relationship with him. We'd go out usually once a year and spend a week or so, sometimes, more often than not, staying at his house. He'd let us stay upstairs, and we just spent a lot of time talking about philosophy, watching movies, doing music, just kind of sharing ideas. And we helped to administer the organization pretty quickly. Like, I became a spokesperson right away. He was like, you're great. I'd love to have you talk. And it was the Satanic Panic was happening at that point, which really got to be a point where people were spreading the most insane stories about this made-up Satanism as if it was some kind of devil cult that went from kids scrawling graffiti under overpasses to like generals and from various countries colluding to bring Satan's empire into some new world order. It was hilarious that people actually believed that, and it was on talk shows almost every other week for years. Is astonishing. I think younger people don't even believe it. You tell them that, and they're like, yeah, sure. But I have them all on video. I have a huge archive of that stuff, and spent hours of my time like representing Satanism, often sitting next to psychotic people who were claiming that they bred and sacrificed babies in Satan's honor. Of course, they were Christians at that point, you see, and so then they felt it was okay, now that they accepted Jesus, that they had birthed babies and slaughtered them in the name of Satan.
That's one of the misunderstandings that people have, right? Like, you guys don't even believe in sacrifice.
Exactly. Well, the whole point is only a theist can sacrifice, because the theist believes there's some kind of supernatural entity that's going to look favorably on that. For us, since we're our own gods, we don't believe in any kind of external supernatural entities. There's absolutely no point to it.
You guys recently celebrated a 50-year anniversary, right? And it got me thinking,
it's coming up, yeah.
Oh, it's coming up. Okay.
Yeah, it's April 30th.
You guys have been around for quite a while. What was the original intent, do you think, behind founding this as a religion?
Well, I think with Anton LaVey, his idea was that he was unsatisfied with what was going on around him. He was a smart guy, and he saw there was like this occult explosion happening, that there were people into witchcraft and Eastern religions were happening. It was the turmoil of the 60s. It was really the conservatism from post-World War II was being called into question on so many levels. The God and country thing was no longer holding anybody's attention as being the most valid path. But he looked at the occultism and said, well, this is no better than Christianity. It's offering, Jesus with breasts where Wicca was concerned half the time. And, he felt that was just not something that was worthwhile. His background was as a secular Jew. And his ancestors migrated to the United States and were not religious Jews. They weren't practicing. They embraced America and its concepts of separation of church and state, and they became very secular people. So he grew up with this very non-God-oriented background. So he felt that the only symbol that really could resist all of this belief, even though things were changing, the belief was still skewing towards some kind of deities, that Satan was the adversary. It's what it means in Hebrew. So by picking that as the symbol, and to stand for opposing all spirituality, which is really kind of the major point in the Satanic Bible. Early on, it states that man invented all of the gods, and that means all of them. And that means all the devils and demons, too. It's a thoroughly atheist text. And funny thing is that Satanism has always been on the cusp of which is worse about it, that it uses the word Satan or that it's atheist. Because if you're a devil worshiper, you at least acknowledge God is there usually, and that you're picking the bad guy in that pantheon. The supervillain against Yahweh is Satan. Mm-hmm. So, but the theists were feeling, well, at least you give us that ground. God's there and you're picking the other guy. But where the Church of Satan came along, it's calling itself a church, but it's saying, no thank you to all deities. And that the center of deity is in each Satanist himself or herself. And that was pretty revolutionary at the time and shocking to so many people, and they didn't know how to deal with it. Nowadays, of course, atheism is much more widespread and accepted. It isn't considered this horrible condemnation as it was at one point. Because, of course, if you were an atheist, you were going to be immoral and you couldn't control yourself. You must need God to tell you not to go run out and rape and murder and pillage. And just confidentially, don't you guys feel that when people say that you really worry about them?
Yeah,
because if that's what they need to keep them in check, then do you really want to even be in the same room with folks like that?
Yeah. I see Ted Cruz, and that kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, I've had these conversations, and I've had that exact same thing said to me. Like if it wasn't for God, wouldn't you go do this and that? And I'm like, no, I fucking wouldn't. If I did, I don't believe in it, and if there was a God, I doubt that I would.
Well, it seems like every God needs some sort of scripture, right?
Right.
So I guess my question to you is, what is the Satanic Bible? I mean, what's the point of that?
Well, it's meant to be like a basic statement of Satanism, and part of it is very showman-like. Anton LaVey worked in carnivals and circuses for a while. And he also worked as a photographer and did sort of on-the-scene photography for police departments. He'd go to accident scenes and murder scenes and things like that. So he really had a kind of dark view of human nature from that. And he felt that he could dramatically put a book together that could be a tipping point, that could be for the right people. Again, it's always for the right people, mm-hmm. because we tend to think that there are two kinds of people. Anton LaVey didn't really define this right away, but in our conversations, he agreed with me in this concept that they're generally, most people are focused outside of themselves. They're looking for an authority figure, either spiritual or political, to give them guidance for what they should do. They can't. The other kind of people are inwardly focused. That they make their own horizons, as Nietzsche would say. That you create your values. That you are self-motivated. And I think that type of person is sadly the smaller percentage of our species. Mm-hmm. So that religion may be useful if it's not a crazy jihadist religion. As Benjamin Franklin thought religion was actually good to keep some people behaving. Those people, you might keep them in order because like maybe they will run off and do crazy things if they don't have that. I do, of course, have hopes that our species can evolve past that intellectually, but it looks kind of like that we're in the great battle of theism versus secularism right now.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
Yeah, but back to the Satanic Bible point, what was he looked through some other texts. This guy named Ragnar Redbeard wrote this really kind of incendiary stuff that's very individualist, but it's also full of anti-Semitism and kind of crazy political things. So what LaVey did is boiled down the good individualist parts and edited them and changed them to make kind of these scathing statements at the beginning of the book that would make you stand up and take notice. They were like, wow, look at that. And then he explained Satanism. He had written the book and published it in 1969. He had founded the church in 66. So he used to give out these sort of pamphlets that explain the basics of the philosophy. He expanded on those essays and said, here it is. This is what Satanism is about. And of course, the chapter that people were most remarking on was the one titled Satanic Sex. And because, again, what was so striking about that was he said all sexuality is fine as long as you indulge in it with another mature person. There's no coercion going on. You can do what you like. Fetishism is encouraged. Be an individualist. Enjoy your sexuality or have no sexuality. If you're not interested in sexuality, we're not some kind of crazy hedonistic cult that's going to make you go out and have orgies. If sex is not your thing, then mazel tov. You don't have to go that direction. But that was, again, something that was, for an organized religion, to have that approach to human sexuality was totally groundbreaking. There were transgendered members from the very beginning of the organization. There are pictures in The Devil's Avenger, which was a biography that was written of Anton LaVey that came out in, I think, 1974. And one of the ladies in there is a transgendered person. And it says right in the caption that those people are encouraged and accepted by Satanism. And the whole LGBTQ XYZ whatever, it's always been fully embraced by the Church of Satan in our philosophy. Wow. So the Satanic Bible set a really good foundation of a way of creating a new perspective that people could dip into and either see themselves reflected in it and use it as a tool to enhance their lives, or they might find it's really not to their taste. There's plenty of secular people and atheists who look in it and it's too theatrical for them, or they don't resonate with the idea of Satan as an anti-hero who's a stimulating exemplar. They have other directions, other aesthetics. So there's an aesthetic component to Satanism, I think, as well. Those of us who kind of like horror movies and things like that immediately can find it fun. Mm-hmm. But it's not something that requires that, too. I live here in the Hudson Valley in a house that looks like the Addams Family. It's a nice Victorian house. It's painted mostly.
Is it the black house?
No,
yep,
that wasn't. Oh,
well, see, Anton LaVey had his own black house. And I have one too.
Nice.
Mine's bigger. But
nice.
And mine's on the historical National Register too.
Oh, nice.
Which is kind of fun. But my wife and I bought it about 5 years ago, and it was a crack house, and we restored the whole thing. We brought back the original Victorian floor plan and had all of the plasterwork redone and all the electricity, and I painted it in this kind of wonderful fantasy Victorian approach, kind of inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's Masque of the Red Death.
Wow.
And the Roger Corman movie of the same thing. And I don't know if you know either of those, but a major feature of the story and the film is progressing through these rooms that are each focusing on a particular vibrant color as a whole experience for the people participating. And so I've done that here. Each room is very vibrantly colored, from reds and deep greens. I have a peacock parlor I'm actually working on right now with very peacock colors. But I have a ritual chamber, of course. It's mostly black with a red ceiling. That's in homage to Anton LaVey's original, and it's about the same size as the one he had in the San Francisco place. So it lives on here, even though his house has been torn down and replaced by some pretty boring condos.
Do you use your house as a sort of a meeting place or a place for church activities?
Oh, we don't have church activities. That's kind of the interesting thing about our organization. Since it's all about being an individual, everybody in Satanism has a life. They don't need the Church of Satan to provide activities for them. I think a lot of people sign up for religions because they're kind of bereft. They don't have friends. They need something to occupy their time. Satanists tend to be really productive, creative people for the most part, and they really don't have time to spare. If we had meetings and nobody they'd probably show up because they'd be too busy doing things. But well, but it's a home. I screen movies. I sort of discuss them. I'm writing a book about film and satanic philosophy. So part of my working towards getting that whole book together is I'll screen movies regularly and discuss the principles with the people that attend. I also do music appreciation lectures. I have people over and play them music that relates. I'll maybe do sort of the Italian influence. You go from Mendelssohn to Respighi and to the modern composer John Corigliano. I do all of these kind of things as sort of education, and I find them just intellectually exciting and fun. So, we have people over. My wife is a cocktailian. We have extraordinary cocktail parties. So
you live it up, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, see, the whole point to Satanism, and Anton LaVey sort of said it humorously, is evil, they like to name us, is live spelled backwards.
Nice.
So we like to live. Like, the whole point to Satanism is vital existence. That's one of his phrases. And so we enjoy all the things that we enjoy. Life is a party. And we also feel there's no afterlife. So unless you're having a good time and you live as full as you can and share it with the people that you cherish, then you're really wasting everything.
Can I say amen, or is that inappropriate at this point?
You could say, hail Satan.
Hail Satan. So what is the difference between the Satanic Bible and the Book of Satanic Scriptures that you published in 2007?
Well, my book collected essays that I wrote over the years that I had published in my magazine, The Black Flame. Now, The Black Flame came out in 1988, I think, or no, earlier than that. I can't remember the exact date. But it was the first newsstand satanic magazine. And we had all different kinds of members of the Church of Satan writing for it. We had art, and we did movie reviews, we did music reviews, and I wrote essays of satanic philosophy. And it went out through Tower distribution. You could get it anywhere on the planet. It was great. We do thousands of copies, and they'd go all over the world. And I collected my essays from that and had a bunch of other ones that I had written that I hadn't published yet. And I had several rituals that I had put together because we believe as Satanists that ritual is something that people do. It's part of our species. But it doesn't have to be wasted paying obeisance or begging to some mythical deity. Ritual can be used for psychologically worthwhile activity. It can purge you of emotions that are making you feel bad. A satanic funeral is something that you use to remember the person who passed. What is it that they did? Who did they touch? That's how you have an immortality, is in the things that you create and the people that you've moved in your lifetime. So you work those emotions out in a satanic funeral. It's a wonderful way of remembering the wonders of the person that has passed. And if somebody really drives you crazy and you're furious with them, we don't think that anger is a horrible thing that people shouldn't have. Anger is a natural response to injustice. We accept the full range of human emotions from love to hate, but of course most people live kind of more in the middle. They don't live on the edges of love and hate as a constant 24/7 thing. So if somebody does something that really arouses your hatred, you can do a ritual to release that, get it out of your system so it's not corrosive, it doesn't keep you back. Nice. So it's basically psychological, the purpose of our rituals.
Okay. Well, can you tell us about some of the actual primary beliefs of the church?
The basic concepts. I mean, we have...
well, what about the 9 satanic statements?
Oh,
can we
sure,
go over those?
Yeah. We have like 9 satanic statements and 11 rules of the earth, and then 9 satanic sins. And the sins are sometimes fun. Maybe we'll do the sins first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's start with
because
the juicy
people always
stuff.
like, yes, it's sins. But in Satanism, a sin isn't something that some supernatural entity is forbidding you from doing. In Satanism, it's a behavior we want to not do. We want to keep these out of our lives. So the first satanic sin is stupidity. We don't want to do stupid things. We don't want to be stupid. We want to be aware. We want to be educated. And the thing is, it's worse than ignorance because you can cure ignorance by research and learning and thinking. But don't be a dummy. Don't be stupid. Like that's our primary thing. Like,
nice.
If you're a Satanist, keep that out of your life. The second one is pretentiousness. And that to us means empty posturing. And for Satanists, we really like to pay attention to human nature and how people behave. We like to read people. It comes from Anton LaVey's Carney background because he used to do cold readings for people. You case the marks, you see what they do. You could if you go back to that old movie Nightmare Alley, which was very influential on him, you see that whole concept being used by fortune tellers and then by a psychologist turns it on the fortune teller. It's really an amazing film noir that if you can catch it, Tyrone Power's in it, an awesome movie. Should be remade, actually.
We'll have to check that out.
Yeah, really good film. But the whole point is look at people who are, again, being blowhards or who are full of it. Like, recognize that and don't do it yourself. Like, don't be a pretentious idiot. Don't be a blowhard. It's like that's something that one could say to a lot of politicians, I think.
Yeah, most of them.
Yeah, and the third one is solipsism. And by that, we don't mean the classical philosophical definition, which is very specific. But what we mean with solipsism is don't project your beliefs and values on other people and expect them to share them. Because what happens, I think, with a lot of folks, and it goes for secularists and religious people, that we look at other people and think, well, they must be operating from our basic premises. And they aren't. So for the Satanist to be really aware of how other people are being motivated, you can't assume that they're sharing your premises. You have to really pay attention to them. And I think today, of course, since we're having such a clash of rabid theism against everybody else, we can see that those folks are operating on very different premises from a lot of other people are. And that makes it really obvious. But I think so often in when even people discuss things, whether they're trying to share being activists, even amongst secularists, everybody would like to move things, more separation of church and state, more being free to do more things without government intervention. We may not all have the same values because even though, if you start with atheism, that means you don't believe that there is any God. But where do you go from there? How do you evaluate what the human animal is? Are you a protectivist? Are you somebody who thinks that people need to be told to do things for their own good? Or do you let people rise or fall on their own, which is kind of how we do it. So that can be an issue of difference when we deal with other secularists, depending on what kind of goals we're seeking. So again, solipsism, don't assume that other people have the same premises that you do.
Okay.
And the fourth one is self-deceit. And that would be lying to yourself. We think that you really need to be aware and be aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, what you can do, what you can't do. And you could challenge yourself, certainly, but if you try to do something that's way beyond your capabilities, then don't fool yourself into thinking that that's going to carry through. It's a basic reference to the basic realism of Satanism. That we really want people to be grounded, earthy, and not fooling themselves on any level. Okay, the fifth one is herd conformity. And, of course, that's the kind of groupthink that a lot of folks do. It's like, well, they all think that. Why don't you think that? And I'm sure that everybody sees that. If you go to school as a kid, there's so many people around you all think one way, and they sort of challenge you, well, why do you think differently? We all think this way. There's something wrong with that. So in Satanism, we kind of caution our members to be aware of perhaps going along with things without examining them and making a full choice, because it can be easy to be swept up in that. It's sort of something our species is prone to. So always be aware of making conscious choices based on your values and not just simply being swept up in some kind of herd trend or something of that sort.
Okay.
And the sixth one is lack of perspective. And that, again, goes to our awareness of what's going on around us. Like, what's happened before? What's coming back? What are people doing? And where do you fit in? The Satanist who doesn't look at what's going on, again, can fool themselves and then go into self-deceit, or just their simple ignorance can make it difficult to achieve the things that they want to achieve. So keep an eye on what's going on around you and look at history. If you want to make history, you have to be aware of what history's been made. So,
well, those sound a little bit better than the Ten Commandments. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, well, we've still got three more.
Okay, keep going.
I'll go through them quickly. The seventh is forgetfulness of past orthodoxies, and that kind of goes with lack of perspective. What we Satanists notice is that as we watch human society, sometimes certain values come into play and infect the society for good or ill, and then they come and they change. Like, things are constantly evolving. But what seems to happen, especially in our consumer society, is that something is often advertised or something is presented as, new and improved, and surprise, here it is for the first time. And we want to be aware of, well, wait a minute, that's just the same old thing. You just put it in a different bottle with a new label. This is nothing new, and here's how it played out the last time. Now, has anything changed to warrant doing this again or approaching it? And if not, then recognize it for what it is, call it what it is, and really don't be the naked emperor running around accepting that. Like, really know what's happening. Two more. The eighth is counterproductive pride. Now, in Satanism, we see Satan as a symbol of pride. We go back to Milton, Lucifer, and the idea of this figure who is not going to bow down to an authority figure. Being proud of oneself and one's achievements and one's intellect and all of that. We consider that a value in Satanism. Pride is a good thing. But if you take it too far, then you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. That if you're just so proud of yourself that you again push yourself into an area of self-deceit, that you don't know really where you stand and what you're doing, and you just look like a pompous idiot. So as you can see, these things all kind of tie in together.
Yeah.
It's all very coherent. They're not these separate things that don't relate to one another. They present this whole worldview of being a responsible individual. And so the last thing that we put in is lack of aesthetics. And for we Satanists, one of the reasons that we're attracted to the whole thing is the aesthetics, the sort of spooky trappings that can be part of it. But that's not the limit to the aesthetics in Satanism. Since Anton LaVey was somebody who also painted and drew even from his youth, which is, again, why we hit it off. We both were musicians and artists, starting from a young age. The idea of concepts of aesthetics, you look back to Egyptian architecture and then Art Deco, which kind of drew off of that, and all these different aspects of things that have come in design and architecture throughout history, clothing styles. Like, be aware of those. As a Satanist, we think that those all have impact. They have emotional impact on the way people behave. And so understanding that aesthetics are really a crucial thing for how people behave is something that so few positions of any sort dwell upon. They kind of think, well, whatever's there is there. You have to work with it.
Yeah.
And we Satanists feel having an environment that stimulates you, that excites you, is truly important for your life. And that goes for your workplace and for your town, your city, and what you wear.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you're walking around with just some sweats on, just pay attention to how you feel, how you present yourself, how you walk, and then go ahead and go put a 3-piece suit on, custom fit, like a beautiful suit. And then tell me how that affects your mood, how you present yourself, how it definitely has a huge benefit.
True,
effect.
and the people around you too. Mm-hmm. If you walk in sweats or you walk in the beautiful 3-piece suits, who's going to pay attention to you more, and who's going to listen to what you have to say?
Yeah,
and I like that because it goes back to the carnal thing.
Yep.
It's very much in line with that, and I find I think me and my brother are relating to this, and we are very much in line with what you're saying. So what does one do when they find themselves to be a Satanist just by nature? How do they
take the next step?
How do they take the next step?
Well, the primary step is you read the literature and you go, oh, this is a tool that I can use. I'm reflected in this mirror of this writing. And by having this self-identification, it seems to give a lot of people more confidence to approach all the things that they're doing in their lives. Mm-hmm. So Satanism isn't meant to be something for anybody else but you. If there was nobody in the world except one person who read the literature and decided they were Satanists, that's all you'd need for Satanism to exist and work. So you apply it. You apply the philosophy. If you want to meet other people who also share that philosophy, then we have online places. We have like an unofficial Facebook group where outsiders can deal with people in the organization. We have people in our hierarchy who represent it and can explain it. Questions can be asked there. And then when you become a member, then we promote what our members do. See, the Church of Satan itself doesn't do activities. Mm-hmm. It never has, and it doesn't now. The whole point is to promote the things that our members do. When you go to our website, churchofsatan.com, you find a news feed that's full of people who are doing things like art shows and concerts and books and merchandise that people do, talks that our members are doing. And so it's just all this stuff. Our members do things. That's the whole point, and we promote them. So the organization's only purpose is to educate people about what our philosophy is. And because of these forums that we have, people deal with each other and so often like each other and work on projects together. But if they do, because the other interesting thing that we understand about Satanism is because it's so strictly about individualism, we find a lot of Satanists may rub each other the wrong way. That it's not this kind of communal thing. It's not a group hug kind of thing. That Satanism is really a basic philosophical foundation, and what you build on top of that could be almost anything, depending on what you are as an individual. And you may not like a lot of other Satanists. We have people who join the Church of Satan to support this organization, which keeps the ideas out there for people, other people to see and go, "Oh, I'm a Satanist. I could use this. It's a great tool for me." But they don't have to deal with each other. We've done some gatherings to mark some history. That's Anton LaVey never did that stuff. He really didn't feel that was going to be productive. They did a couple of small gatherings, and he wasn't all that thrilled with how people kind of clashed with each other. What we did back in 2006 was there was the 6606 scare where there was like a worldwide panic.
We went to go see The Omen that night.
Yeah.
Oh, the great choice. Those are fun movies. But for that, we worked with the Center for Inquiry West in Los Angeles, which is a prominent atheist center, to put on a satanic high mass, which basically mocked the fear that people had for this number. Because the only reason we use 666 at all is because people are afraid of it, and we think it's hilarious that they're scared by that. It has no mystical significance whatsoever, except people are dolts and go, it's 666. But we kind of spread to the world at that point this message that don't be afraid of this. It's superstition, and superstition is not a good thing.
Yeah.
So we did a whole event for that. We did a performance. We filmed a very classic satanic ritual as Anton LaVey had described them in the Satanic Bible. I kind of wove it together to be all these things together. That's why it was a high mass, and we had a lot of fun. We had a live musician, Lustmord, who does this sort of dark ambient music, was live doing our score for it, and it was lit like a Mario Bava horror film. It was sort of Hammer meets Mario Bava and dark ambient. It was loads of fun, and the set was designed after the movie The Black Cat, which has Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff in it. If you should see that film if you haven't, it's really fun because, of course, Karloff and Lugosi, you can't go wrong. But the idea is that Boris Karloff is a brilliant architect who does these Art Deco stuff. And he's also the high priest of a satanic group. And everybody that shows up for his rituals are all dressed up to the nines. And this house is awesome. It's ultra modern for the period. And Bela Lugosi is an old rival of his who shows up and finds what nefarious doings are going on there. But the ritual chamber used all these kind of crystal shapes and angles. So we employed those in our set for the 666 event. And you can see it on our website. If you search there for that, it comes up and you can watch the video of what we did then. We kind of loosely filmed it. We had to rehearse it all week, and then we had shot some of the rehearsals and shot the performance. It wasn't really planned to be a film, but we figured, all right, we could knock it together into something that people could relive it from. And then we did an event in the Hellfire Caves in England, which is where Francis Dashwood and the Hellfire Club used to celebrate sort of carnal rites that mocked religion. And Benjamin Franklin, of course, used to go there and have a ball. So there's these wonderful caves that are tunneled out under the West Wickham estate. And we threw a banquet and ritual in there that was loads of fun. And we were, where our sort of forebears, both the British and American freethinkers, the people who really didn't believe in religion and used ritual to mock these stultifying beliefs and to celebrate carnality. We felt that was truly a great place to look back at our ancestors, our intellectual ancestors, and celebrate their legacy. Beautiful. And a year ago, almost a year ago, April 30th, which is Walpurgisnacht, we did the beginning of our celebrations for our 50th anniversary. And we gathered in Washington, D.C., and we felt that was the best place because it's the seat of the United States. And we think the United States is a truly satanic nation because it does promote separation of church and state and all of the values, generally speaking, that Satanists support. Nice. We often call it the United Satanic America, and we do need to get some of those things out of the pledge and such. All these things people have sort of snuck in, but Washington we felt was the right place to be for us because it's this wonderful legacy of secularism, and we did salon presentations for an afternoon where our members explain things that they do, and that we have people who are motivational speakers, and we have people who are publishers, we have people who are ecological activists who actually are doing some major work to deal with issues of world radiation levels, and we have another person who is dealing with our freedoms that are being encroached on by the government these days. So we have some powerful people who are not so open about their affiliation. Often they're completely underground about it, but it's because they're far more effective in moving the world towards these goals that would make it better for us to be free people and to express ourselves and not worry about repression.
So can you tell us about the 9 satanic statements?
Sure. These are sort of symbolic ideas that kind of give you some basic thoughts about what Satan symbolizes to us. And Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. And of course, that goes to our fun, our lifestyle, enjoy. Don't abstain, indulge. I'll go through them and I'll go back to that one.
Yeah.
Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit, which of course we pulled in again in the sins, but there you go. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. And that too comes from the idea that Christianity is always telling you to turn the other cheek and love everybody, and we think that's such nonsense. You can't love everybody. Actually, you probably love a very handful of people in your life, and certainly don't give it on people who are doing ill to you. That's completely foolish. But at the time, again, this was like a really revolutionary statement with people are again, promoting Christianity. And even Eastern spirituality is still kind of like, oh, yes, everybody can nice. We should be nice to everybody. And this is like, don't waste your time on people who are ingrates. Like, give up on them. And to follow up on that, Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. And for us, we really feel that we try to get justice done. We do it within the social contract. We agree with Hobbes that the social contract is something that we need because we like life to be more than just brutish, nasty, and short. We have civilization. We want to continue civilization. But we believe that we need to have law enforcement that can work to that. And we have to work towards not just being sheep and bowing down to people who are abusing us, but stand up for ourselves. So following that, Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. Now, responsibility to the responsible is a very important principle because that means people deal with people as they deal with you. We kind of follow a silver rule rather than the golden rule. We deal with other people as we would like them to deal with us. But if they don't deal with us back that way, then we deal with how they've dealt with us. Mm-hmm. So if they're rotten to us and do terrible things, then we have to resist that. We have to stand up to that. You don't just bow down and go, oh, well, I like there's something better about being trodden under. Satanism throws
what's
that
a
away.
Psychic vampire?
Oh, yeah, that's the next part. A psychic vampire is somebody who tries to prey on your emotions so that you give them things that they don't deserve. It could be somebody who would, brings a box of candy that you don't like, then expects you to suddenly do things for them like, oh, I gave you that, so now you owe me. So a psychic vampire is basically, it's not some kind of mystical thing or some energy sucker or some science fiction nonsense or supernatural nonsense. It's basically someone who would prey off your emotions, often by giving you stuff that's valueless to make you feel guilty and obligated to doing things for them that they actually want done.
Wow, yeah, that's good.
And there's a lot of those, I'm sure.
A lot of those.
Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, but more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who, because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development, and that's in quotation marks, has become the most vicious animal of all. And that basically means theism and spiritualism, because of these crazy ideals that are not tied into reality and how people behave, allows people to be horrible to each other. Look at the Crusades and look at the Inquisition and look at Ireland, where we have two Christian sects fighting against each other. Theism always leads to people torturing each other because one side thinks they have the real answer and they feel they have to force it on everybody else. If people would just be like animals and follow their nature instead of this sort of theism, patinaed behavior of xenophobia that is parcel of our society for thousands of years, that we are finally getting away from on some levels, that man could actually be better and move forward. But we don't have high hopes for that, especially when you turn the news on every day.
Yeah.
And then the eighth is Satan represents all of the so-called sins, as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. And that goes back to the good old seven deadly sins, lusts and anger and sloth and all those good things. And what it basically means is if you indulge in those moderately, they kind of balance themselves so that they end up being something good for you. So you don't have to feel that these are some such terrible things that you're going to go to hell for. If you overindulge with gluttony, the vanity part will get you to go to the gym and work out. If you're too slothful, it's like, you get your rest, but then you'll get back up and do more things. So they end up being kind of these fun little guidelines rather than horrible things that one must oppose. So that's what he was tying in. It really meant the seven deadly sins, not everything. There's so many sins that the Christians come up
Hundreds.
with. So it's kind of like, it really goes more back to them. And then finally, a statement of what we think is true. Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years. And that's the whole point. Most religions need a scapegoat. They have to tell you, because they've got an unnatural philosophy, and they tell you, how to control your sexuality and how to control your behavior. The only way they could get you to do that is by saying, there's this guy with this horns and a tail who wants to steal your immortal soul, which of course they can't prove that you actually have one. But they tell you do, and this baddie's after it. So if you don't behave and you don't do these things we tell you to do, if you don't come to the church and pay your tithes, if you don't use the missionary position, and oh my goodness, if you do something with somebody of the same sex, Satan got you.
You don't want to lick an asshole, then you'd be really screwed. That's basically what you're saying.
That basically would send you straight to hell, I'm sure. Unless the Catholic priest is doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
That seems to be something that they've at least had to pay a lot of money out for.
Well, I tell you what, I'm pretty sold.
Yeah.
And so now I just want to know, how do I join this thing? So can you give us a little advice on that?
Yeah, well, anybody who reads the literature, and I basically suggest that they read the Satanic Bible and then read my book, The Satanic Scriptures, because it talks more about the organization itself in more detail. And if you feel that you want to be part of it, it's simple. It's just $200 for a lifetime membership. And most religions tithe people. They take a percentage. And we're like, look, here's your initiation fee. It's got to be big enough so just not everybody does it, because we want to have a little bit of a buffer. It has to be a choice. Like, do you want to buy these really nice shoes, or do you want to join the Church of Satan? Or you want to go out to dinner to a really cool place, or you want to join the Church of Satan? Maybe you do one week and one the next, or 1 month, depending on what your salary is. But the idea is, it just shouldn't be like, click, I'm a member, because then any idiot will. And that doesn't mean it's a commitment or any even thought. And if money values keep changing, then the membership fee will go up, because it has to be something that has to be a little tug on you.
Yeah.
So that it's not just like, oh, I don't care. I mean, there's plenty of people, $200 isn't really anything. But enough people it is, and it's usually the people who would be the ones that we don't want joining, because we will turn people away too. When folks approach us and they really don't get it, we're just like, keep your money, just go away. We have no interest in you. We get hundreds of emails every day, and so many people think that Satan exists, and that if they join the Church of Satan, they're going to be wealthy and powerful and have sex with whoever they want to. And we just go, no, it doesn't work that way. Just, even $200, you need a lot more than $200 for that to happen in your life.
I've heard you get a pretty cool, red card or something, though. Is that true?
Yeah, we give it's a red card. It's the same design that's been used since the early part of the organization. We like to keep things kind of traditional. We send out a membership package with the sheets that are in these bright colored paper, because again, Anton LaVey did that, and it's just sort of fun to maintain that tradition. And we kind of feel that when you sign your registration statement, that you make a little pact with yourself, that your deep mind sits up. Because, again, it's a form of ritual. We think that ritual really is something effective for most people, that if you do something, it has the sort of deeper psychological resonance. So by you signing your name, putting it on the dotted line, committing yourself to Satanism, that's affects you, and it makes you think about it. Of course, if you want to leave, it's very easy, too. You just send the card back and send us a note saying, I'm out of here. That's simple. And we're like, okay. And we ask people if they would like to tell us why they've decided to move on, that's fine. But it's not a cult. We don't tie people up and browbeat them and try to make them stay. It's very much you're welcome to come, or go. It's up to you. If this works for you, if it's a valuable experience to you, if it enhances your life, and it should be something enhancing your life because that's what Satanism is all about, then you're welcome here.
Nice.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for coming on today and talking to us. It's been very educational, and it's been a great experience.
It's been great. Is there any way that people can reach out to you via social media? What's your social media thing like?
Well, we have I mentioned before the unofficial group on Facebook that people can go to. If you go to our news feed, we have a Tumblr and Twitter. It's sort of the same stuff goes across those of what's going on.
Okay.
So people can do that. And once you become a member, we have a private group that people interact in. Okay. And we're also working on some other very interesting things on that I can't quite go into right now. That might be
nice.
So.
All right.
Well, thank you again, and have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You too. I wish you both well. Have abundant joy in all that you do.
Thank you.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.
Thank you for listening to the Evil Twin podcast. To get the full Evil Twin experience, go to eviltwinpodcast.com and follow the guys on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Evil Twin Podcast. If you really want to show your support, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcasts on iTunes. And remember,
Surf är bara unit. Alltså surf den. Surf någon måste